A deep, gritty, and breathless male voice. Intense cinematic tone with audible struggling breaths. Slow pacing at first, then rising with desperation and determination. Use a gravelly texture to convey exhaustion and pain.
Welcome to Vital Life Stories. Today, we explore a terrifying journey of human survival deep inside a completely dark, isolated cave. Adventure often calls the brave. But sometimes, nature answers with unexpected cruelty, trapping the human soul inside a cold, unforgiving prison. Every step forward takes him further away from the safety of sunlight, descending into an ancient world untouched by human hands. Without any warning, the massive stone ceiling violently collapses, sending heavy debris crashing down and completely blocking the only known exit. A deafening roar echoes through the chamber as a colossal rock seals his fate, plunging his entire world into absolute darkness. Dust fills his lungs while he desperately taps his failing flashlight, watching helplessly as the fragile bulb flickers and dies permanently. Now surrounded by an impenetrable black void, a chilling realization washes over his mind, marking the beginning of his ultimate nightmare. 72 hours of pure isolation commence right now, transforming this underground cavern into a psychological battleground against his deepest fears. He reaches out blindly, feeling the freezing, rough surface of the massive boulders, desperately searching for any impossible gap or weakness. The sheer scale of the collapsed rocks emphasizes his extreme vulnerability, making him feel entirely insignificant against the brutal force of nature. Driven by pure panic, he aggressively pushes against the heavy stone wall, but the massive obstacle remains stubbornly motionless and unyielding. Exhaustion quickly sets in as he rests his forehead against the freezing stone, his rapid breaths forming faint mist in the air. As the first day slowly passes, the freezing temperature bites into his skin, forcing him to huddle tightly to conserve precious warmth. The absolute absence of light begins playing wicked tricks on his vulnerable mind, manifesting terrifying hallucinations that dance in the dark. He presses his hands firmly against his ears, silently screaming into the void to escape the maddening echoes of his own thoughts. The second day brings severe dehydration, leaving him exhausted on the dusty ground, with deeply cracked lips and a fading heartbeat. A single drop of moisture falls from the ceiling, and he desperately reaches out to catch the precious liquid on his tongue. The tiny droplet misses his mouth, forcing him to frantically wipe the moisture from his dirty cheek and lick his trembling fingers. Driven by unbearable hunger and blinding thirst, he begins frantically scratching at the solid rock, desperately hoping to uncover a hidden pathway. His fragile fingernails break and bleed, leaving dark crimson drops on the unforgiving gray stone, a brutal testament to his desperate struggle. Despite the agonizing physical pain tearing through his flesh, those bloody hands continue digging relentlessly, refusing to surrender to the dark tomb. Sweat mixes with thick cave dirt on his hollow cheeks, tracing the silent, dried tears of a man pushed beyond human limits. His exhausted body completely collapses onto the hard ground, his chest barely rising with shallow breaths, as defeat slowly begins creeping in. An eerie silence blankets the cavern, while the oppressive darkness feels like a living entity slowly swallowing his frail, motionless, broken body. In his darkest moment, warm memories of his loving family and bright golden sunlight suddenly flash across his fading, dreamlike subconscious mind. Suddenly, his eyes snap wide open in the pitch-black void, ignited by a fierce, undeniable spark of pure human survival instinct. Gritting his teeth through the immense pain, he forces his bloody hands against the dirt, slowly pushing his heavy, exhausted body upward. His broken body shakes violently with every movement, yet his eyes have completely transformed, replacing paralyzing fear with fierce, unbreakable determination. He embraces the humble act of crawling, slowly dragging his battered frame inch by inch over the sharp, jagged, and unforgiving rocks. His knees scrape harshly against the jagged stone, tearing his thick clothing and revealing painful, bleeding wounds that scream in absolute agony. He pauses briefly to catch his breath, heavily panting as drops of salty sweat fall and stain the dry, dusty cavern floor. Pushing forward, he squeezes through an extremely narrow rock crevice, the heavy stone walls pressing tightly against his ribs, severely restricting breath. He tightly shuts his eyes, focusing every ounce of his mental strength to battle the overwhelming psychological terror of severe underground claustrophobia. Using his bruised shoulders, he aggressively scrapes his body through the tight gap, his torn clothes ripping further from the harsh friction. Bursting out of the narrow passage into a slightly larger space, he collapses onto his back, wearing a faint, triumphant, exhausted smile. The darkness remains absolute, yet his unbreakable iron will now shines brilliantly, like an invisible guiding torch, illuminating his path to survival. He continues crawling forward without hesitation, his bloody hands reaching out to tightly grip protruding rock edges, pulling his heavy body along. Every painful inch forward leaves a faint, smeared trail of blood on the rocks, providing brutal evidence of his incredible, unwavering resilience. The surrounding shadows stretch like massive dark tentacles trying to hold him back, but he powers through their psychological grip with determination. Complete exhaustion reaches its absolute peak, causing his blurry vision to spin wildly as the cave environment dissolves into a dizzying haze. Desperate to remain conscious, he violently slaps his own dirty face, the sharp, sudden sound echoing loudly throughout the confined underground space. His eyes burn with fierce defiance, exploding with sudden rage against his cruel fate as he releases a powerful, echoing roar underground. That primal roar tears through the shadows, fueling a massive adrenaline rush that allows him to forcefully push a blocking boulder aside. His battered hand suddenly touches a smooth rock surface where a faint, gentle breeze stirs the dust, making him freeze in shock. He presses his dirty face near a small rock crack, closing his eyes to deeply breathe in the faint, fresh air outside. A single tear of pure hope escapes his eye, rolling down to wash away thick dirt on his extremely exhausted, haggard face. Reinvigorated by the breeze, he frantically uses his bleeding fingers to aggressively dig and claw at the loose rubble blocking the crack. Loose stones and dry dirt slowly crumble away, slightly widening the narrow gap, just enough for his trembling arm to fit through. He carefully slides his bloody arm through the newly widened hole, grasping desperately at the empty space waiting on the other side. Suddenly, his trembling fingers brush against a thick, damp tree root, providing a clear, undeniable sign of the vibrant world above ground. Gripping the sturdy root tightly, he uses it as leverage to forcefully ram his bruised shoulder against the surprisingly fragile rock wall. The powerful impact causes the rock wall to crack apart, allowing a faint, beautiful beam of external light to pierce the darkness. The sudden introduction of light blinds his adjusted eyes, forcing him to quickly raise his wounded, bloody hand to shield his face. Despite the painful glare, his cracked lips slowly curl into a radiant, triumphant smile, showcasing a man who successfully conquered absolute death. Gathering his very last ounce of strength, he aggressively pulls his entire battered body through the glowing, jagged hole in the rock. As half of his body emerges from the dark prison, golden sunset light beautifully illuminates his bare, severely scratched, exhausted back. He finally slides completely out of the cavern, rolling onto a patch of lush green grass and exhaling a deeply relieved breath. Looking upward, he gazes at the vast blue sky, with fluffy white clouds drifting peacefully, completely opposite to his dark underground prison. He raises his bloody, scarred hands against the bright sky, proudly viewing these brutal wounds as glorious medals of his extreme survival. A flock of birds flies gracefully across the frame, their cheerful chirping perfectly symbolizing his joyful, miraculous return to the living world. He presses his face deeply into the soft grass, closing his eyes to breathe in the fresh, earthy scent of living nature. The majestic mountain landscape surrounding the cave entrance is revealed, highlighting the beautiful world he fought so hard to see once again. A pristine dewdrop resting gently on a blade of grass sparkles brilliantly under the warm, golden rays of the beautiful setting sun. Tears stream freely down his dusty face, reflecting an expression of profound, overwhelming happiness and immense gratitude for simply being alive today. Struggling to stand upright, his exhausted legs shake violently, but he eventually finds his balance, planting his feet firmly on the earth. His striking silhouette stands tall against the vibrant sunset sky, serving as a powerful symbol of enduring life and incredible human resilience. He begins walking forward with slow, limping, yet incredibly steady steps, moving bravely toward the vast horizon of his bright new future. The memory of that dark, menacing cave slowly fades away, replaced by the brilliantly bright, sunlit landscape of a brand new day. A vibrant green sapling pushes its way up through a crack in dry rock, beautifully symbolizing the unstoppable force of intense life. This terrifying survival story is not merely a physical miracle, but a profound lesson about the true strength of our human will. When we are violently pushed into absolute darkness, the only guiding light that can truly save us is our own unwavering belief. That humble act of crawling through dirt proved something monumental. The human spirit will never surrender, regardless of how impossible things become. The eternal battle between light and darkness constantly surrounds us. Yet an iron will guarantees that light will always emerge victorious, eventually. He walks slowly into the blinding sunlight until his figure fades, leaving behind a legendary inspiration for anyone facing their own darkness. Thank you for watching Vital Life Stories. Stay strong, keep fighting, and we will see you in our next incredible journey. Goodbye.